Hello, welcome to the Craft House Magic set of tutorials. My name's Ellie and today I'm going to show you how to knit a sock toe up. So in the first tutorial, part 1, I'll show you how to cast on stitches, increase and knit the foot. In the second part, I'll show you how to knit the heel. The third part, I'll show you how to knit the leg, the rib part, and then cast off your stitches. So first of all, we need to make sure we've got all the things we need to knit our socks. So you'll need about 100 grams of yarn if you want to knit full-size socks. These Knit Picks Felici come in 50-gram balls, so you need 2 of those if you do get the same as me. Some scissors, a darning needle, a progress keeper, and some needles. Now I've chosen to use the magic loop method because I find it much easier to knit the socks toe up using these needles. These are higher sharps. They are 2.5mm needles and the length of the cable is 60 centimetres. I definitely think that having sharp needles for this method is really important. It makes it much easier. So because my yarn is a self-striping yarn, what I want to do is have my socks match. So in order to find the same point of the yarn for the first and the second sock, what I do is find a point where there's 2 colours and I've snipped the yarn just at the beginning of where the grey starts and I've cut off the colour before so that I know that I can cut it at the same point for the second sock. So in order to cast on stitches for my sock, I'm going to do Judy Becker's Magic Cast On. I've actually taken some tips from Nathan Taylor's or the Sockmatician's YouTube channel, where he slightly modified this technique so you don't need to twist any stitches. So in order to do this, I take the end of my yarn and I just put it over my first finger and I leave about 20 centimetres. I then take the rest of the yarn and put it over my thumb. So you always have the end of the yarn running over your first finger and through your hand, so it's at the back of the work once you hold your hand like this. I then take my 2 needles where my magic loop's attached to and I make sure that I've got a little bit of space between the 2 needles. I then split the needles with the yarn like this and I scoop to create your first stitch. I then scoop on the back, putting the yarn between the 2 needles to form my second stitch, and I carry on like this, creating stitches until you have enough. So what I'm going to do is have 12 stitches on the front and 12 stitches on the back needle. So I shall carry on doing that. If you ever stop, just make sure that you've got your cut end on the back like you had before. So I've now got 12 stitches on the top and 12 stitches on the back. Be careful to hold your end and you're going to turn your stitches, turn your needles so that you have what was the bottom needle is now the top and what is now the bottom needle was the top before. So I then pull the needle from the bottom and put my needle to start knitting into the first stitch, and I'm now going to knit across the top carefully so I don't lose any of those stitches. You can let go of your end once you've done the first couple of stitches, the one that's hanging just here. Now I've knitted across the first row, I'm now going to turn it around like as if I'm knitting magic loop, and I'm going to be engaging the next needle in order to knit the whole round. It is a little bit fiddly, this first part, but once you've done your first round it is much easier. So I've now completed a round, and as you can see there's a seamless toe. So I like to add a progress keeper just here so I know where the beginning of my round is. So I've added my progress keeper to mark the beginning of my round, and I'm going to do a make one stitch in on both sides of each needle. Now there are 3 types of make one. There's the make one where you just lift the stitch and it makes a little hole, and then there's make one left and make one right. On the right of my work I'm going to do a make one right, and on the left of my work I'm going to do a make one left. If you want to, you can have these the other way around, as long as you're consistent on every row or on every needle. So I'm going to do a make one right. First of all, I'm going to knit one. So I've knit 1 stitch, and then I'm going to lift that to create a stitch, make one, and by having the yarn leaning right onto the needle, that means I'm going to make one right, and then I knit into that stitch. So we've just made one, and I'm going to knit right across until I'm 1 stitch from the other side of the row. I'm now 1 stitch from the edge, and I'm going to lift this piece of yarn between the 2 stitches, and I've got my yarn coming from the front of the work to the left, so this is going to be a make one left. And in order to stop it from making a hole, I need to knit into the back of the stitch of a make one left, and then I knit the last stitch. So that's one side of increases done. I then turn the work around in the way you do it when you do knitting in the round, and I'm going to knit 1, and then if I open the stitches up, you can see that there's a bar between the 2 stitches. I'm going to place that onto the left hand needle, and the yarn is pointing to the right hand side, so I know I'm making a make one right on the right hand side of the work. I then put my needle in, and I'm going to knit this stitch as normal from the front, and then knit to 1 stitch from the end. So I'm 1 stitch from the end, and I'm going to lift that yarn between the 2 last stitches, put it onto the needle so that I've got the work at the front of the yarn at the front of the work is pointing to the left, so this is a left slanting decrease, so I'm going to knit into the back and then knit the last stitch. So that's your first row of increases done. I then turn the work around again, and I'm going to knit 1 entire round of just plain knit. So I can tell this is the beginning of the round because the progress keeper's there. So I'm going to carry on and increase on every other row until I've reached a count of 60 stitches. So I've increased until I've got 28 stitches on each needle, which means I need to increase another 4 stitches or 1 increase row to get the total number of stitches that I need. That's 60 stitches. And you can really see that there's a lovely clean cast on edge with my increases either side, and that's where your toe's going to go. So I'm going to show you one more increase row, making sure that you're knitting in the round all the time. So I'm going to knit 1, and then I'm going to pick up the yarn between the 2 stitches and place it on the left hand needle so that it slants to the right hand side as before. I'm going to knit into this stitch from the front, and then we've increased on the one side. So now I'm going to knit all the way to 1 stitch away from the end of this needle on the round. So I'm 1 stitch away from the end of the needle. I'm going to lift the yarn that goes from the 2 stitches, and I need to make sure the yarn is on the right way so that the yarn leans to the left hand side, because we're going to do a left leaning increase, and then knit this on through the back loop and knit the last stitch. So we're going to do the same on the other side of the work. So we're going to turn the work, I'm going to knit the first stitch and then do a right slanted increase and knit through the front of the work. There we go. And then we're going to knit to 1 stitch to the end of the needle, so 1 stitch to the end of the needle. I'm going to lift that yarn that spans between the 2 stitches below, make sure that it's slanting to the left, and then knit through the back loop and then knit the last stitch. Now that we have 30 stitches on the front and 30 stitches on the back of the work, we've got enough stitches to go all the way up the foot. So in order to work out how much to knit, I take the length of my foot from the end of my toe to the back of my heel. My length is 9.5 inches, so what I do is take 2 inches away from that measurement, and you get 7.5 inches if you're the same as me, which means I just need to knit 7.5 inches if you measure from this point here of just plain knit. So I'm just going to carry on with that, and I'll come back to you in the next tutorial, part 2, where I shall show you how to do your heel. Thanks for watching.